The town of Ravens Hollow was like many others in the countryside. Quiet streets, neighborhoods where everyone knew each other, and a routine so predictable that any disruption quickly became a legend. But there was something the townsfolk avoided mentioning out loud: the house on No Return Hill. It loomed ominously atop the most distant hill, surrounded by twisted trees that, at nightfall, looked like skeletal hands reaching for the sky. For generations, stories about the mansion were told by grandparents and parents who wanted to keep their children away from the hill. The legend said the house was cursed, that a vengeful spirit known as the Warden of Wales haunted its halls, trapping anyone who dared to cross its threshold. The lights that sometimes flickered in the windows and the muffled cries that echoed on stormy nights only reinforced these beliefs. But for Jack and his friends, the legends were nothing more than exaggerated tales. Jack was the leader of the group, known for his adventurous spirit and never backing down from a challenge. On that October night, as the fog crept through the streets like a living creature, he decided to prove once and for all that the stories about the house were mere superstitions. With him were Sophie, whose sharp senses often made her notice things others overlooked; Marcus, always the skeptic with an air of superiority; Lisa, who loved documenting their adventures with her camera; and Ben, who, though hesitant, couldn't let his friends face it alone. "Come on, the night's just starting," Jack said with a defiant grin as they made their way up the trail to the hill. The full moon hid behind clouds, and the wind carried an eerie whisper that made the trees sway restlessly. "Maybe we should turn back," muttered Ben, eyeing the house that now stood fully before them. It was larger than he had imagined, with broken windows reflecting the dim light of their flashlights like hollow eyes. The front door, dark and cracked, resembled an open mouth ready to swallow those who approached. "We're here now, Ben. We're not quitting," Marcus responded, trying to mask his own unease. Lisa raised her camera and recorded the exterior of the house, her hands slightly shaking. "If we find anything, this will be epic," she said, half laughing, half nervous. Sophie, who remained silent, felt a presence in the house, an unsettling sensation that made her heart race without reason. The door creaked as Jack pushed it open, and the group stepped one by one into the main hall. The smell of mildew was intense, mixed with something metallic like rust or old blood. The wooden floor groaned with each step, and the silence seemed to swallow every sound except for the faint rustling of leaves outside. Their flashlights lit up the walls, revealing peeling wallpaper and old portraits of people with cold expressions, their eyes following the visitors around the room. "Guys, this place is different," Lisa said, filming one of the portraits up close, a woman in a black dress who seemed to smile almost imperceptibly. Marcus, still skeptical, rolled his eyes. "They're just old paintings. We're scaring ourselves for nothing." But then, Sophie stopped abruptly and pointed to a dark hallway to the left. "Did you hear that?" The group froze and listened. For a moment, nothing. But then, a faint whisper reached them. It sounded like a rough male voice, coming from somewhere deep in the house. "You shouldn't be here." The air grew colder, and a chill swept through the room, making the unlit candles on the candelabras sway. Jack tried to stay composed. "We should see where that's coming from," he said, though his trembling voice betrayed his anxiety. Cautiously, they followed the sound, which seemed to lead them further into the house, down narrowing, darkening hallways. Sophie held Ben's hand tightly, feeling dread build in her chest. Suddenly, a door to their right slammed open with a bang, revealing a room bathed in an eerie blue light. Jack entered first, followed by the others. In the center of the room was an old gramophone that began playing on its own. A melancholic melody filled the air, and then, woven into the music, a deep voice echoed, "No one leaves." Their flashlights flickered and went out for a second. When they came back on, Sophie screamed. In the corner stood a tall, gaunt figure with eyes glowing a sickly red. The Warden of Wales. It moved slowly, as if floating, and its piercing gaze seemed to reach into their souls. "Run!" Jack shouted, but the exit had vanished, as if the house itself had shifted. Ben, in a panic, began pounding on the walls, searching for a way out, but found only cold, unyielding wood. The sound of scratching and footsteps echoed all around them, encircling them. Lisa kept filming, unable to stop, tears streaming down her face. The warden moved silently toward Jack, who found himself frozen. An icy paralysis took hold of his body, and he heard a whisper directly in his mind. "You're mine now." Suddenly, Marcus, who had been trying to force open a locked window, began laughing uncontrollably. His laughter turned to a scream, and he collapsed to the floor, eyes rolled back. The house seemed to feed off their fear and despair. With a final act of courage, Sophie raised her flashlight and shone it directly into the warden's eyes. It recoiled for a moment, giving Ben just enough time to find an old side door and pull Lisa and Sophie outside. The cold wind hit them as they tumbled onto the wet grass. When they turned back, they saw Jack in the window, his expression vacant and lost. Behind him, the warden stood, its dark grin watching them. The town of Ravens Hollow woke to the sound of sirens and a new story to tell. Jack and Marcus were never found. Lisa, Sophie, and Ben left town soon after, but on quiet nights, they could still hear the whispers from the house on No Return Hill, which now had new names to add to its list of victims. And so, the legend continued, with townsfolk telling visitors about the house where no one escapes and the silhouette of a boy that sometimes appears in the window, staring with hollow eyes and whispering one final word: "Stay."